Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to be unpacking some profoundly moving source material today that asks us to do something that honestly feels incredibly difficult for a lot of us. It asks us to simply lean back. So, if you're joining me right now, I want to invite you to just take a second and unbrace yourself. Seriously, drop your shoulders, unclench your jaw, and let go of the heavy demands of your daily life, just for the short time we have together today. We're going to explore this incredible concept called the architecture of rest. We'll look at how that deep, bone-level exhaustion you might be feeling right now isn't actually a sign that you're broken. It's a sign that something entirely new is being rebuilt inside of you.
The text we're looking at opens with this absolute gut punch of a thought. The world has been resting on your shoulders for so long that you have forgotten what it feels like to be the one who is held. I mean, wow. Just let those words sit with you for a second. Our entire time today is fundamentally about acknowledging that deep tiredness you carry in your jaw, your shoulders, and your spirit, and completely changing the way we interpret that exhaustion.
All right, let's jump into Section 1, the cost of exhaustion, and the invisible tolls we've all been paying.
Okay, so let's dive into this really crucial distinction, because the source material makes a fascinating argument about how we totally misinterpret our own burnout. We get this feeling, right? We feel heavy, empty, completely unable to take the next step. And we look at those feelings and instantly conclude, I'm failing. We think it's a moral failure, some verdict on our character, or proof that we're just weak. But the text reframes this so beautifully. It argues that you are not failing at all. You are finishing. And the wild thing is, finishing looks exactly like failing from the inside. It has the exact same heaviness. But finishing is actually your body's way of telling the truth about a massive, unseen effort it just completed. It is literally an honest receipt for the cost you've paid.
And this illustrates perfectly how your exhaustion isn't just coming out of nowhere. You have been paying for your life in what the author calls small currencies. You know these moments. It's the skipped meal that results in physical depletion. It's crying for just 90 seconds by the kitchen window before pulling yourself together to make breakfast. That's a hidden emotional toll. It's taking a really difficult phone call and forcing yourself to maintain a calm voice. Or saying yes to one more thing when absolutely every cell in your body is screaming no. Each of these currencies looks so small in the moment, but together, they added up to an absolute fortune. Your exhaustion is simply the accumulated receipt of all that quiet, unphotographed devotion.
Moving right along to Section 2, the architecture of rest.
So here's the crucial takeaway. Rest is not a reward you qualify for after you've proven your value. If you grew up learning that your worth is strictly measured by your output, this is going to be a massive paradigm shift for you. The source defines rest as the ground value itself. It's the structural soil that everything else grows out of. You do not have to earn it. It's built into the very architecture of time and the bones of how the world actually works. Think about it. When you stop to rest, you aren't stepping off the path. You are actually stepping into the rhythm the world was designed for.
The text builds on this using a really beautiful analogy from nature, the wisdom of the autumn tree. Just think about how a tree operates. When the cold arrives, it lets its leaves go. No negotiation, no apologies. It doesn't push to keep producing through a season that literally wasn't made for production. Instead, the tree embraces its bareness, because that bareness allows for slow, invisible, underground root work. By the time spring comes around, the tree has been completely remade in the dark. The text suggests that so many of us are like trees refusing autumn, just desperately clinging to dead leaves because we're terrified of looking unproductive.
Which brings us to this incredibly simple yet surprisingly triggering phrase. Just notice what part of you flinches when you hear these words. Notice the part of you that immediately wants to argue, or start listing off all the chores and projects you haven't finished yet. That part of you has been managing your life for way too long. And I want to speak directly to that part of you right now. Loudly and clearly, you have permission to stop managing everything. You are allowed to rest.
Let's move into Section 3, releasing the invisible weight. We need to get really specific here, because, as the source wisely notes, vague releases tend to just come right back wearing slightly different clothes. So here is exactly what you need to set down. That performance you're putting on for an audience you can't even see anymore. The constant vigilance for threats that haven't even arrived yet. Replaying that one awkward conversation for the 17th time in your head. The exhausting mental ledger of who owes who. And perhaps most importantly, that idealized tomorrow version of yourself that you keep promising to become. Just set it all down. The only version of you that is required right now is the exhausted, honest one.
The author compares this release to handing over a ridiculously heavy bag after a very, very long walk. You do it slowly and gratefully, but then there's this sudden shock when you look down and realize your hands are actually empty.
It's this moment of profound realization where you finally acknowledge just how heavy the cost of carrying that bag really was all this time.
Now, what's fascinating is how the source normalizes the weird emotional whiplash of finally letting go. First, there's the grief of release. You might actually feel a wave of sadness, and your brain might tell you that means you made a mistake and you should probably just pick the burden back up. But the text says no, that grief just proves the weight was real and the release was honest. Then, underneath that grief, comes the strangeness of lightness. Because your body has literally forgotten what being unburdened feels like, this new lightness might actually feel like panic at first. It might feel wrong, but I promise you it isn't. It's just the new texture of your life.
Okay, section 4. The clearing in the woods. Let's talk about creating a space for healing. To get to that mental space, we actually have to start with the physical body. So let's do an unclenching breath together right now. Seriously, do this with me. Inhale slowly through your nose, making it thick and slow like honey. Now exhale out through your mouth, making that exhale just a little bit longer than the inhale. Notice your shoulders drop without even having to tell them to. Notice your jaw unclench, even just 1/4 of an inch. You literally just permitted your body to turn down its internal storm by half a volume.
From that much quieter physical space, I want you to visualize stepping into this safe clearing described in the text. Imagine soft ground layered with fallen pine needles. Picture this gold, slow light filtering through really old trees. The scent of cedar and rain in the air. What's absolutely vital about this clearing is its rules, or rather, the total lack of them. It requires zero productivity, it has zero schedule. You can show up sobbing, you can show up entirely numb, and you will simply be held. It's a space of pure, unconditional love that expects zero repayment and zero future interest. And why is this specific clearing so important? Because of this one foundational rule. Healing precedes lifting. You cannot rush into your next battle. The inner, cellular repair of that old, finished version of you must happen in complete horizontal stillness before any forward movement can even begin. Your absolute only job right now is to not interrupt that silent healing. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Rising Without Straining. Let's think about the opposite movements that dictate our lives. You have most likely spent years doing what we'd call pushing. Pushing originates from the inside, it strains outward, and it is entirely fueled by sheer will and pure exhaustion. You've been bracing yourself, right? Trying to drag yourself into your next chapter. But the source promises that your new terrain requires a completely different kind of physics. It requires lifting. Lifting originates from the outside, it comes inward, and it relies entirely on being still enough to feel the hands that are already underneath you, supporting you. The author uses this absolutely stunning metaphor of the mist to explain this. Think about the physics of mist on a lake at dawn. Mist does not push itself into the sky. It doesn't strain or flex its muscles. It is gently invited upward by the warmth of the dawn sun. It rises slowly, quietly, without a single ounce of effort, relying entirely on the right conditions holding true. Just like the mist doesn't force its ascent, you will eventually rise without straining. You'll be invited upward by warmth, rather than driven forward by force. You see, you don't need to brace for the next storm anymore, because the battles of your last chapter are officially over. Your beautiful, hard-working, incredibly noble past version, it's finished. That self simply cannot go where you are heading next. Your next chapter requires a completely new self, one with lighter shoulders, slower hands, and much deeper roots. And that new, quiet peace isn't something you can force. It's being grown right now exclusively in the horizontal stillness of your rest. Which leaves us with this final, provocative question for today. Are you ready to stop pushing and allow yourself to be lifted? Because letting go of that heavy bag is really just the first step. The real journey here is discovering exactly what that new, unburdened version of you is capable of when operating from a place of deep, true rest. What on earth will you build when you no longer have to push? Take care of yourselves, and thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I'll see you next time.